Transition, the process of change from one condition to another.
We are now at a new crossroad where change is evident once again.
What does not serve us must transform us anew.
Returning to our original state of oneness and true nature of that which created who we truly are.
Confusion was the way of the past. Enlightenment is the way of the now and future, shedding away the layers of deceit.
We now bring you the transformation of the two who started as one. Our fearless planet never stands still.
Earth has been in a process of transition, and we are not exempt from this remarkable ongoing reality.
Well, good evening and welcome to Transition Radio's Real Talk with the Cummings. My name is Angelo.
And I'm Lynna Ariel. Thanks you guys for joining us here on this Tuesday evening.
Yes, as the world continues to turn round and changes in life, it's what it is, and kind of like a new normal, I have to say. So, it's one of those things that you just can't control.
You can't do anything about it, so might as well just live.
That's all you can do, live, and however that is for you. I believe that what's taking place is like a shedding of the old, just like the intro says. And, it could either consume you with fear, or you could look at it as a new opportunity of changes, to go within, to change whatever it is. It could be a marriage, it could be whatever it is that's about to unfold in our lives. And nobody knows what's going to happen, but do know that you have to be present. You have to be in the frequency of love, not fear, and be prepared. Be prepared. So it looks like we got 3 people, and somebody just joined us. Emma. I can't see because I have the...
Emmy says hello.
Hey, hello, Emmy. How are you? So, as soon as you get a little
Marcy
more people.
says, good evening, everyone.
Hey, Marcy,
Emmy
welcome.
says, you look great together.
Yeah.
Thank you, Emmy.
Mm-hmm. So, what are y'all doing with your time, and how are you faring this social distancing? I mean, I'd love to hear from you guys to see what you guys are doing. If anybody wants to call in and share their experience, how their whole world has changed, you're welcome to call in at any time at 575-265-0538. What is it that you're doing with your time? How has your life changed? That's a great question for many people to answer.
Yes. What are we talking about tonight?
Well, we got a lot of questions here, wondering what we could do about the following issues. Because human beings tend to kind of go on autopilot in life. They get up every morning, turn off their alarm, take a shower, eat some breakfast, head out to work, whatever it is that your normal, quote unquote, has been. And people are just running on automatic pilot. They really don't analyze or think much of anything, just kind of like, get along to get along. So this kind of changes are really getting us to think about a lot of things. And I think Marcy said something. I can't see it from all the way up there.
Yeah, Emmy says, I sit in home in isolation.
Wow.
And Marcy says, been laying around totally fatigued. I don't know if it's from doing nothing or run down. Emmy says, but still having a lot of work home. And Marcy says, what have you two been doing to keep busy?
Well, we've been, going out to the park and working out, and just kind of just a lot of changes, internally. And I don't know. I'm actually trying to see, because right now there's a lot of jobs that are being offered because of, all the, especially like the really, what are they called? Service jobs, that
essential
services. So, instead of just sitting home and whatever and trying to, do practically nothing, I think that's probably going to be my next move, is trying to see if I could find a job for an essential, service. So, homeless people, I mean, these are individuals that normally we don't think about. Where can they go and what should they do? You know, how do we help get them supplies without breaking social contact? And that's, you know, that's something that I think will be a really great thing to do, help the homeless.
Yeah, I saw that this local school was set up with meal service to provide for kids that are out of school, because a lot of times parents, depend on the schools to feed the kids and
Yeah.
stuff. And these programs are still being offered in cities around America. So it's really nice to see that people are volunteering, and also that the school district still is being able to help parents out. I mean, they do pay taxes, right?
Yeah, and I heard something about that. There were a lot of lines, because I mean, schools usually provide lunch for kids, and parents are trying to make ends meet and trying to do what they have to do during these critical times. So, there's not a lot of homeless here as there was in Portland. In Portland, there was tons of homeless people. So,
oh yeah, Portland, like everywhere you'd go. I mean, at one point there was a tent that was like not too far from us, right, just across the fence.
Yeah. So,
what do they do? What can they do? I mean, they live in not the greatest of sanitary conditions. So I do recall that back when the epidemic of 1918 went through and ravaged the world. I mean, I think there was a lot had to do with sanitation and, the sanitary conditions in the areas and stuff, because people weren't being hygienic.
Right.
And diseases spread, as we all know, as cholera did in Haiti after the earthquake in 2010 or 11 or something like that, that these are the conditions that are ripe for disease to be able to go.
They fester.
And
extremely so. And I mean, it's, what do the homeless do during a time like this where there's social distancing, where you're not really supposed to be outside? It's, you got to kind of wonder what's going to happen to them, and what's, like if you look at New York City, I mean, there's a lot of homeless there, and that's the epicenter of this. There's a lot of cases that's taking place.
Yeah, they said they've opened up a field hospital in Central Park, and they didn't even do that when the flu went around in 1918. They opened up that area for field hospitals. The last time they did that was in the Civil War.
Yeah.
So
crazy.
We're living in really unprecedented times that I guess we're lucky enough to be living in. I don't know if you call it luck or not, but I mean, it is a very pivotal time in our history to be able to be alive, to experience this, whether it's good or bad. Marcy says, there's a really sweet guy that walks around my neighborhood who is homeless that I give food and water, etc. to, and I haven't seen him since the quarantine. I'm worried, unless he found shelter.
Wow. See, that makes me think, like, are they being rounded up? Are they being placed? And hopefully if they are, that it's safe, that it's, I could go into all the conspiracy stuff in my head, but let's hope that they're putting them in a safe place, and they're giving them shelter and water and food and things of that nature, and keeping them from harm's way. So here's another question.
Abuse. Batterers are forcing their victims out of the house with nowhere to go and accusing them of being ill, sometimes falsely.
So imagine, that you're living with somebody who's abusive, verbally, physically, whatever it is, and that you're quarantined with that person, or, having to stay away from going outside. The horror of that, and then you got on the flip side of the coin, some batterers are ignoring public safety rules and bringing diseases home to victims who are stuck in their house. Abusers are using the increased isolation as a smoke screen to attack. So that's got to be, something really horrible.
I also hear that abuse is up in homes. The cases of
in
abuse,
the nursing homes, you mean?
No, in homes. Like abusers, because people are in isolation, they're
Right.
together. So the chances of getting into arguments are greater. So
Yeah.
there's a lot more domestic violence happening
Well,
at this time
I'm sure
because
it
people,
is.
if you are being abused, you can't get away because you're being told to stay inside.
Yeah, these are
Quite a
times
crazy
where
time.
if you're in a relationship, it'll make you or break you kind of thing. But I believe that everything happens for a reason, and this whole change that's taking place, it's almost like a cleanup.
Weren't we doing prison? Wasn't
I
it?
already
You already
read
talked about
Oh
prisons?
no, I didn't. I skipped that one. Sorry. Go ahead.
Oh no. Prisoners are humans as well, and dying from a disease is not a punishment for any crime. It can also spread disease to guards and the guards' families. Should we release any, and if so, when? And if so, then who? I think at this time, the prison population is at a very precarious situation here because people are together.
Right.
They eat together. They do a lot of things together, and then they go back to their cells. But my opinion is that those that have been like convicted of nonviolent crime and other things where people can be monitored and they're not like some kind of substantial threat to society. I think that prison should open up to letting some people go on early release or something, or parole or something, because it's not safe.
Yeah. And I think there have been some prisons that have let a bunch of prisoners go, but the question is, where do they go? Because usually, somebody that's been incarcerated for a while doesn't really have a place to go, and especially in this type of environment or climate. And it's like, where do they go? And, let's hope they don't release violent individuals or individuals that have, a rap sheet, and that they're not going to pose a danger to societies. And that's sometimes you got to kind of worry, like what Castro did back in, was it 1980s or something, that he let a bunch of people leave from Cuba, where they were all prisoners and they were all criminals, and
Right.
he just like put everybody on a boat and sent them to the United States, Florida to be exact. So we got to kind of be careful with that, because God only knows what.
And I think that there should be a system, a rating system for, if someone stole a car or something, or they got convicted of using, steroids or something, people that have like an offense for like drunk driving, or I don't know.
Yeah, you never know.
Nonviolent
Or mentally incapable of functioning in society in these extreme type of situations, where on a good day, most people have the coping skill of a grape. So imagine on days like these that people, like they say in Spanish, ahoga un vaso de agua, they drown in a glass of water, because they can't handle what's going on in the world.
Marcy said, thanks. I try to help when I can. I was worried about him being forced somewhere. He is mentally ill and likes being outdoors. I would hate for him to be trapped.
Yeah, it's like a horrible thing. And it's just, you got no way of knowing where he's at, And that's something people, like I said, we don't have a lot of homeless here. So unlike Portland, where, they all hung out in their little tents and stuff like that, I'm wondering, people that do live in an area there, that there's a lot of homeless, if they're still there, or they've been like booted out or taken somewhere. How about dying alone? Is there any possible way to get families to see patients, or patients out to see families, in which nobody breaks social contacting? Can we at least allow them to speak on a phone or a voice chat? For patients who are terminally ill, is it possible to facilitate home death? These are really hard times. They don't allow you to see a loved one that's sick. They don't want, like, typically when you have an ill parent or something like that, you're allowed to go visit them. Not now, because the hospitals are, they're a war zone. So if you have a sick parent, they don't want people going from the outside in to bring in the virus. So,
Yeah, I had heard that there was a family that was losing a family member, and the only way that they could communicate was via walkie-talkie.
Yeah.
I mean, that is really tough.
It is.
I appreciate New York actually relaxing the rule. I mean, I don't know if it's a good thing or not, but for a pregnant mom, you know, in labor, needing somebody to be there with, the governor relaxed the rules to allow one other person to be in the room with a birthing mother and stuff. So, but again, there was a guy who had some symptoms of COVID-19, and basically he was he didn't let anybody know, but he went and was there for the birth of the child, and being there for the mom and everything for his wife, and
spread it.
He had it, and now she's in the hospital.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
be careful what you wish for, although it is a very traumatic thing not to have your loved one right next to you and stuff. I mean, is it worth, you know, potentially putting everybody else, the doctor and everybody else, the hospital's lives in jeopardy? You know, we lost a neurosurgeon recently. Neurosurgeons don't just come around, you know, they have to really train for that kind of thing.
You know, on a good day, a hospital is a petri dish. You know, you go in there and you come out with 5 other things, you know, so I cannot even imagine how it is right now. And, you know, I know there's a lot of people out there that think it's a hoax, that it's fake, you know, and there's just too many people reporting, people that are actually in the trenches, you know, for it to be a hoax, you know. So, I mean, I wouldn't play, you know, I really wouldn't play.
Now they've allowed for people to go in. Before it was via the honor system.
Right.
Now it's via temperature. So they take your temperature.
Yeah. And that's not even bulletproof, because I mean, I've heard that you could have this and not have any temperature, you know, and be asymptomatic for a while till it really gets a hold of you. And Marcy says, I don't see why people can't stay with their loved ones with proper protective gear. I don't either, but they're just not doing it. I guess they don't want to risk it. Well, first of all, they don't even have enough protective gear for themselves.
They're wearing like trash bags for PPEs.
Yeah, and that's not safe.
Literally using like on the ceiling and putting plastic sheeting to separate the patients from, you know, being able to infect other people. And, you know, lately we've been told 6 feet. And interestingly enough, we were watching a mini series that came out back in 2016 that was called Containment. And it was about cordoning off an area in Atlanta metro area that basically had a virus rampant in it. And those people said 4 to 6 feet. Now I hear MIT researchers are saying 28 feet. 28 feet. And the head of the CDC over in China, he said that he doesn't understand why every American isn't using a mask when they go outside. He said it's ridiculous to think that you are putting your life in that type of jeopardy. But I think our own government is making light of it or diminishing the value of it because we don't have the ability to get masks and stuff. So they're playing it off as it's not important. But if you see any video from other places around the world, they are all wearing masks. Pretty much.
I don't think this is going to end up too pretty. You know, I want to be positive about it because spreading fear does absolutely nothing. But I don't know. The death rates are going higher. They're going. They're increasing, and you know, it's just. I don't think it looks pretty. And Marcy says,
Mark, that video you posted about China not giving accurate data made me think, has this been spread on purpose or was that ruled out already?
There's so many what ifs, so many speculations, so many different theories, so many different things that it's really hard to keep up, What we do know is that we have something pretty big on our hands, and it's changed life as we know it. Like the show's called, we have a new normal. And who knows what that new normal will look like.
Back last week when we were reporting on our show about what was going on with the pandemic, there were 49,000 cases in the United States.
That was last week.
In New York City alone, overnight, cases jumped 14%, and they alone have 75,795. So, and the count was at least like 165,000 last night.
Right.
And I don't know what it is now.
Yeah,
so
this is booming,
replicating.
Completely, yeah. And Emmy says, in China, the epidemic is over. In Europe, when I come from, it's tragedy, especially Spain and Italy. There's a lot of peers say that it's not over, that they're pretending that it's over, that they're letting people. I posted another video up on my Facebook that is showing a different picture. People are rebelling. People are, and again, we only know what they allow us to know, what they put out there, what the truth really is. Only time will tell. So number 5 here says,
depression and suicide. Imagine with everybody being cooped up and stuck inside most of the day. Do we have any generic advice or solutions for what to say or do for someone suffering from this that we can broadcast on TV or through government addresses?
Are there suicide hotlines we can recommend, and other types of contact we can give to people who are socially isolated? Well, I think the typical suicide hotlines still hold true. People need to get outside. They need to be out in nature, whether it's going hiking, for a run, for a walk, going to the park, keeping that social distancing, of course. But I think vitamin D is so important to keep yourself healthy. A lot of visualization, meditation, trying to really get a hold of your higher self, and just try to be as positive as you can in these dire times.
At the park yesterday, though, there were people there, and they were still gathered in groups. There's a school that comes out with kids from like a rehab center and stuff, and basically they're all together. Kids are coughing and they're close proximity to each other. In this state, there are counties that still have business as usual, restaurants open. The counties that don't have anything going on in them with any reported cases under the governor's mandate are allowed to still continue business as normal. But here in Apache Junction, what they call essential services is really a very wide thing. Nail salons are still considered essential services.
That's
beauty
crazy.
salons.
That's not even.
Barbershops, places of close proximity are still considered essential services. So This is not something that our governor here in the state of Arizona is taking very seriously, because although school's out, you're still able to get your nails done.
Yeah.
That's
to me, it's irresponsible completely. When people want to live life status quo the way they've been living and not realizing that we're under a pandemic, and they have to respect that, because it's not just your life that you're putting in danger. You're putting the lives of others in danger, and that's irresponsible completely. So Marcy says, I saw a few videos showing China's lying that it's over or trying to hide a cure. Not sure what's true. Again, there's so much speculation. There's so many people saying so many different things. Who can you trust?
What we do know is that people can get reinfected. And I think China is dealing with reinfections and a second wave. Because remember, pandemics, they don't just come and go. They come and go in waves.
Yeah.
They don't just leave. They come back sometimes with a vengeance. And the more the virus is allowed to replicate itself and mutate, sometimes it goes back into the animal kingdom, but other times it just becomes a more pernicious more lethal version of itself. You know, say it goes and mixes in with the gorilla population of Africa, and then it mixes in, and then it infects a person. I mean, it's capable of mutating into something far more lethal. And
Definitely.
you know, and if it is a BIO weapon, basically we don't know what the potential is, you know.
So Emily says,
I was just telling that we are told in mass media here.
and then Marcia says, media is saying the same thing here too, but there are a bunch of videos going around that China isn't being truthful. You know, on a good day, China doesn't tell the truth. You know, they try to, it's like a dysfunctional family that don't want the rest of the world to know how dysfunctional they are. That's pretty much China.
But to the fact that, you know, there are so many stories being told that even in our own, you know, good old USA here in the United States, we're not being told the truth either. So many times, you know, these news organizations, whether they be the left side or the right side, they still all report to the same, you know.
And think about it. You know, they may not be giving us the full picture because people would panic. You know, human beings don't tend to behave the greatest when they're under a sort of pressure or something going on in the world. They lose all sense of, you know, civil nature, and they become uncivilized. So, you know, the government's hands are tied in some ways. You know, also, are we dealing with some sort of takeover? I mean, there's so many things, and I don't want to speculate, and I don't want to create, you know, conspiracy theories and things of that nature. It's not the time for that. You know, we all have to like try to be in our calm place, not allow fear to take over. We need to be positive with one another as much as possible. I'm not saying stick your head in the ground like an ostrich, you know, because reality is reality. We've got to face it. But least amount of, you know, speculation and fear mongering. I think it's best. And Marcy says,
I feel like it's going to explode soon as the quarantine is lifted. I'm just waiting for the other shoe to drop.
Yeah, I think there's more to this than the pandemic. I think there is an other underlying issue. There's a lot of weather conditions taking place in the world, you know, from volcano erupting to fires, to flooding, you name it. I mean, so is this the version of Armageddon? Who knows? You know,
it would have been far-fetched back in 2012 when that movie came out to think of these situations and things and go, oh, that's Hollywood. You know, that's, you know, earthquakes in like, oh, come on. It happens, but, you know, to the cataclysmic version of what it was when there was an earthquake in LA. I mean, they've been waiting for the big one for years, right? The big San Andreas fault line is supposed to crack sometime. That wonderful Old Faithful geyser up there in Wyoming is part of a caldera, which is a massive volcanic super volcano that is, I mean, it's gurgling and it's making noise. Earthquakes in Salt Lake City. I mean, fires on the entire continent of Australia. Things that you would think were unimaginable are happening.
Where was it that I said today there was a massive fire too somewhere? Somewhere, I can't remember now. There's so many things going on. Oh wow, we got a massive fire someplace that I played a little short video. I can't remember exactly where it was. I think China actually had massive fires. Yeah, that's what it was, China.
Oh, and then Marcy says, I did see a documentary a few years back that global warming can release a bunch of old diseases that we have no immunity to. Yeah, exactly. Stuff that's been buried in the permafrost in Antarctica, in the Arctic, these Siberian regions in Russia and things like that, that have been hidden away from, you know, ever being seen or experienced, are still lying under the surface. And should the sea temperatures, the surface temperatures rise, you know, 2 or 3 degrees, it doesn't even take that much for water temperatures to rise for these things to be available.
So what about people with disability? People who are disabled may be having an even harder time, especially they cannot locate someone to help them around the house. Can we test people or take people who are already tested and have them help? And then, that's another thing that's kind of a little worrisome. It's like all these testing, and I understand, that's one way of knowing what's going on. But is this something that is going to take further of our freedoms away? You must get tested and you must be vaccinated, or you're not allowed to go out back to work or be part of society. I mean, things like that are kind of a little scary,
Well, I mean, what would it take for, an entire pandemic to ravage a country, say, they're throwing numbers out like 100, 200,000 people literally dying in the next 6 months from this in the United States alone, that they wouldn't want to mandate that, these for people, because this is going to be a preventative measure to keep anything like this from ever happening again. And that would be a way to make people be V'd in order to be able to get your check from the government, when business goes south again. And
or you're not allowed to go back to school. You're not allowed to go back to work unless you have your health certificate, saying you're a clean bill of health, you've gotten all your V's, and, so, it's like a lot of our freedoms will be taken away because of all of this. So, yeah, number 7.
The economy, what we talked about last time we were on. What are we going to do about landlords who try to push tenants for not being able to do what the landlords themselves can't do, which is to squeeze blood from a stone and make the payments? What are we going to do about companies who are worth billions who throw workers out on the streets because they got sick?
Yeah, these are things that, many people don't really think about, but people are being laid off, or your hours are being cut, or you're told your job is not essential, so you don't have a job. What do you do? What do you do when your landlord knocks on your door and says, "Where's my money?" I think in Canada, they've freezed all rents, and they've done the right thing for the people.
I mean, there are still cities in America today where if you can't pay your water bill, it's getting cut off. And
That's pretty sad.
They make a big deal out of those cities that make an allowance for people to have water. But what is that? What is that? Why is that some good thing when that should never be taken away from people, no matter what happens? People should never freeze to death in a blizzard because they didn't pay their electric bill. I mean, but yet in this country, which is basically has everything and has the ability to heat everyone that needs it, give everyone shelter and the ability to have those essential necessities in life, they still use it to hurt people. It's really sad.
It's really sad. So, there's a lot of need for ventilators, and I still try to wrap my head around that, why hospitals have such little ventilators and why there's not a place where ventilators can be quickly made. I mean, how difficult is it? But General Electric workers launch protest demands to make ventilators. GE workers who normally make jet engines say their facilities are sitting idle while the country faces a dire ventilator shortage. So how can that be? I don't quite understand that,
On Monday, General Electric factory workers launched 2 separate protests demanding that the company convert its jet engine factories to make ventilators. At GE's Lynn, Massachusetts aviation facility, workers held a silent protest standing 6 feet apart. Union members at the company's Boston headquarters also marched 6 feet apart, calling on the company to use its factories to help the country close its ventilator shortage amid the coronavirus pandemic.
So these protests come just after General Electric announced that it would be laying off 10% of its domestic aviation workforce, firing nearly 2,600 workers, along with a temporary layoff of 50% of its maintenance workers in a bid to save the company $500 million to $1 billion. This news came as Congress stood ready to pass a multi-trillion-dollar corporate bailout that would include at least $50 billion in federal assistance and $25 billion in loans and temporary tax reliefs for the aviation industry, as well as further $17 billion for federal assistance to companies deemed crucial to national security. GE says it does not plan to request funds from the stimulus.
In a press conference, members of the Industrial Division of Communication Workers of America explained how General Electric's current layoffs and closures would undermine future efforts to increase ventilator production. Without experienced workers to operate now empty and idle factories, production will likely be slowed down.
IUE CWA Local 86004 President Jake Aguananga offered his plant located in Arkansas City, which they just had a tornado, by the way.
That's Kansas.
Oh, Kansas.
It says here.
Kansas.
Arkansas City, Kansas.
Oh, okay. As an example of how much manufacturing capacity could be converted. More than 52% of its workforce have been laid off, and several football fields worth of factory space are currently sitting idle. If GE trusts us to build, maintain, and test engines which go on a variety of aircrafts where millions of lives are at stake, why wouldn't they trust us to build ventilators, he said.
GE's healthcare division is already one of the country's largest manufacturers of ventilators, so union members believe that other factories could be converted to produce the life-saving devices. Hospitals around the country say that there is a critical shortage of ventilators, and many experts have implored President Trump to invoke the Defense Production Act to require companies to produce them. Trump finally decided to make General Motors produce ventilators over the weekend, the first in a series of deals that may eventually call on General Electric to increase ventilator supply. I think it's interesting, though, that in the last hour, GE announced a completion of a biopharma sale to Danaher, and they received $20 billion in net cash proceeds. I mean, they just bought into big pharma.
Wow.
And they're complaining about, cash
and laying people off. The company says it also has ramped up ventilator production in its Madison, Wisconsin factory, and said that it also needs to consider the needs of its other customers, like the U.S. military, before changing the types of products and specific factory mix.
GE is working around the clock to increase production of much-needed medical equipment. GE Healthcare has already doubled ventilator production capacity with a plan to double it again by June, in addition to partnering with Ford Motor Company to further increase ventilator production, the company said in a statement. We continue to explore additional opportunities to support the fight against this COVID-19 while continuing to support mission-critical work for our customers as well.
CWA members say that they are desperate to help. Ventilators are desperately needed at hospitals in New York, California, Washington State, and Florida. They soon will be in short supply from the East Coast to the West Coast, from Puerto Rico to Hawaii, from Alaska and Illinois to Texas, said CW President Chris Shelton. Most Americans are not aware that the best ventilators are already made by GE within the company's healthcare division.
Our country depends on these highly skilled workers, and now they're wondering why they're facing layoffs instead of having the opportunity to use their unbelievable skills to help save lives, said Shelton.
Yep, that is really bizarre, but
So they buy a $40 billion company, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or they receive $40 billion or something, and they cut 10% of their aviation unit workers. I mean, they're laying off 2,600 people.
That's crazy. It's a lot of people. So is this COVID-19 outbreak a black swan or the new normal? While we continue to grasp the scale of this pandemic, the new challenges we face point to more permanent changes we must make in our lives and how we do business.
In the time between writing this and reading that and reading it, whatever I said about COVID-19 will likely be out of date. Of course, that's how it is. That's the nature of something moving at exponential speed through society. The scale of what's happening is hard to grasp, and it's logical to wonder whether COVID-19 is the so-called black swan that society and business have feared. The answer is, of course it is, but it also could be the kind of challenge we now will face all the time, our new normal.
So it's way too early to talk about lessons learned. I don't think a lot of people have learned anything yet, while a large scale of human tragedy unfolds. But it's hard to think about anything else right now. And the brain looks for something useful to grab onto. So I'll make a few observations about this global challenge and its relation to our other mega issues like climate change.
Big picture thoughts. We have to get better at understanding and reacting to exponential growth. As of February 11th, the number of COVID-19 cases outside of China was fewer than 400. As I write this 5 weeks later, it's more than 90,000, a rise of more than 18% in a single day.
Teachers have long used this parable to explain exponential growth. Imagine a pond with a single lily pad. Each day, the number of lily pads doubles, and in 30 days, the pond is covered and smothered. On what they do, you think it was half covered? What about only 1% covered? The answers are 29 and day 24, even if you use a 50% growth rate instead of 100%, it's day 28 and day 19.
In the context of COVID-19, this means that if we don't flatten the curve of growth, as they've all been saying, a vast amount of illnesses and death will hit very rapidly. Our healthcare system and economy risk collapsing under the weight.
You know, we didn't react properly when this first came to volition, and I don't know if we're at a point of no return because first of all, there's still travel. People are still getting on airplanes, going from point A to point B. All it takes is one person to be infected to create 59,000 infections.
Yeah.
That's a lot. One to create 59,000 is like a multi-level marketing. So we don't know, we really don't know what the final outcome of all this is going to be. We do have experience and spotty success managing the exponential growth that drives our biggest global challenges, including population, use of resources, and emissions of greenhouse gases. From the Industrial Revolution to the 2010s, these all have grown non-linearly. The growth of emission is now slowing, thankfully, but in part because it was hard to envision what exponential growth of emissions would look like. We've reacted too late to avoid significant impact on people and the planet.
And recently, the president rolled back emissions rules and regulations that were in place by the Obama administration to, say, burn cleaner fuel,
Right.
to raise mileage limits, for cars and things like that, so that there's less bad smog issues and other pollution issues.
Right.
Recently, that's been reverted back to something else,
Right.
which is not helping the planet. But in part because it was hard to envision the same thing is happening now with COVID-19 as people are slow to dramatically cut contact with others. And so some unknown amount of suffering still lies ahead. On the flip side, because we need some good news, some great things have moved non-linearly in recent decades. The lessening of childhood poverty, the reduction of some diseases, some down to zero, and the downward slope of the cost of renewable energy. These positive trends drive deep change in society and require preparation as well.
Planetary boundaries will shape our world for the foreseeable future. There's only so much planet to go around. Only so many productive minds, only so many fish in the sea, only so much arable land, only so much CO2 that oceans and atmosphere can absorb, and so on. As we test these limits, we risk shifting the planet beyond recognition. All economies and businesses have to find a way to work with these basic speed limits.
Arguably, the rise of viruses like the one that causes COVID-19 is a byproduct of some of these boundaries. Scientists don't have a full understanding of the origin of COVID-19, but it's known that bats were probably involved, as well as some other species. The earliest people infected in China worked in a live animal market with unusual fare such as pangolin, a kind of anteater, another unexpected source of the outbreak. But why are people eating so-called bushmeat? Perhaps this oversimplifies, but it's a combination of pure survival and an attitude that animals live for man.
When nearly 8 billion people inhabit a single planet, pushing up against nature, and billions don't have enough to thrive, they will eat anything. And when we see nature as purely something to use, we overexploit it. We must understand that we are all connected. The pendulum has been swinging in recent years to an every person for themselves attitude.
So Marcy said, it's disgusting how people are more worried about how they can financially benefit off of the virus. Price gouging is rampant everywhere, even my gas station for a drink. And she also says, you would think people in a business would want to help people more right now, making products cheaper, not jacking up prices.
That's the human greed and the human selfishness, that the world revolves around them and all their needs, and they don't care about anybody else. And I think this is why I'd hate to say that this is like karma. It's like a massive karma that has taken toll, and we're yet to see where it's going to lead us.
They should get GE to ramp up production of TP.
Yeah, toilet paper. What is that?
Pure nationalism is frankly dangerous in the face of borderless issues like climate change, resource overuse, and yes, pandemics. On some level, we're only as strong as our weakest immune systems. In this vein, seemingly political questions like, should everyone have some basic healthcare coverage, become issues of human and economic thriving. In short, if people have no coverage and can't stop working when they're sick anyway because they lack paid leave or benefits, they will show up at work.
They will handle and prepare food. They will sell us our groceries. They will drive our lifts and our ambulances. There's no hiding behind physical or economic walls forever. If there isn't a basic floor of access to energy, water, food, and healthcare for everyone, we're all at risk. If we don't all thrive, none of us will. And capitalism, and we spoke a lot about that last time we had a show, doesn't care about people's health, doesn't care about anything but proliferating, making a profit. The stockholders is who they care about. So capitalism does not work for a healthy environment, for healthy individuals, for fairness for all. It's meant for the 1%, and if we want a different world, we have to create a different system, in my opinion.
Climate change and disease are linked. There are overlaps and dependencies between all our biggest issues. As the planet warms, the seasons will lengthen and geographic ranges will expand for many dangerous diseases such as malaria, dengue fever, chikungunya, and West Nile virus. We need to think about our health care system with all these trends in mind.
At the same time, when the seas rise and some areas become uninhabitable, there will be more refugees. They will likely have little economic and healthcare support. I'm not saying that the refugees bring in exotic diseases. Our own citizens traveling on planes and boats have imported and spread COVID-19. But we can recognize that more people on the move with limited institutional support will make for better overall health.
And in a perverse way, economic slowdowns from market crashes or pandemics, they slow emissions. As former UN climate chief Christiana Figueres said recently, slower economic growth from coronavirus may be good for climate, but there is less trade, there is less travel, there is less commerce. This obviously is a consequence that evokes mixed emotions. Less pollution is good, but the human costs of economic slowdowns add real pain to the already devastating outcomes of a pandemic.
We can see from space that air quality around Wuhan, China is dramatically better when people, stop doing anything. This is not how we want to get there, but this crisis allows us to imagine a world where the footprint of our economy is much smaller and people can quite literally breathe easier. About 8 million people die prematurely from bad air every year. Wouldn't it be nice to find a way to build an economy for all that greatly reduces the risk of pandemics and slashes the ongoing death and diseases from pollution and climate change?
Some thoughts for companies. In the thick of a crisis of this magnitude, it's hard to step back and see what companies might take away from what they're experiencing today. But let's try. A few things. When in doubt, we should put people first. First reaction to the V, especially in the US, seemed to be about mitigating its effect on the stock market and economy.
Many companies put out statements about impacts on supply chains and demand. All that matters, but seriously, we're experiencing a human health emergency. Companies and governments can do better than just talk about profits and the market, and that's all they do. Given the tragedy at the core of this, company leaders should ask themselves, what's the best thing we can do for our employees? Going virtual is the easiest for some organization, but it gets more complicated for jobs that can't be done remotely. Can companies provide some emergency pay for workers as the economy slows, or at least ask for government grants and loans to do so? Or how about no rent paying and just going to a different system altogether? What that is, I don't have the answers, but it's got to be better than what we're doing now. Because what we're doing now with this capitalism system is failing. Look at, we're falling apart.
Many companies also have experience with putting companies first in an emergency. One of the defining moments of corporate sustainability came in 2005 when Walmart's leaders realized that the company was doing better than the government at getting supplies to people trapped by Hurricane Katrina. This led to soul searching and the CEO asking himself what else the company could do for society. More recently, Budweiser shifted production to make 500,000 cans of water for hurricane victims. And many companies have worked with the UN to offer aid during pandemics. Unilever provided 750,000 bars of soap during an Ebola outbreak.
As I write this, companies are beginning to step up and take dramatic actions to help the world get through the pandemic. French luxury leader LVMH announced that it's pivoting 3 factories to making hand sanitizer, and it will give tons of the gel to the French government and hospital systems for free.
Communities, governments, and employees will remember these actions. These companies, by helping people and doing what's right, build trust and enhance their license to operate. Economic resilience in the face of black swans requires companies to do things differently. Our current economic model is based on pursuing efficiency. Find the quickest and cheapest way to do or make something. That's why things are in China. And you likely have a time or cost advantage. But global supply chains that optimize for centralization and reduce costs have serious potential weaknesses.
An analysis of global supply chains early this month calculated that world's 1,000 largest companies and their suppliers have over 12,000 facilities in quarantine area of China, Korea, and Italy. We've seen something like this before. Massive floods in Thailand in 2011 shut down factories that make critical parts for the computer hard drive industry and components for major automakers. Those were the only places some parts were made.
Nothing can prevent the demand reductions that will come from social distancing and severe cutbacks in travel and all services. But more generally, there are some things organizations can do to reduce the risk to operations. They can build into their value chain some duplication and diversity. Key principles of resilience in nature. We have 2 kidneys, for example, for a reason, in production and suppliers. In the short run, multiple supply chain and production pathways may seem less than efficient, but they come in handy in an emergency. Businesses should value resiliency and risk reduction in their plans and investment calculations, not just whatever gets them the lowest cost today.
Companies must also prepare for good exponential trends which demolish some business models and create new ones. The clean economy, for example, is replacing fossil fuels at what seems like a slow rate, but like the lily pads, it will take over quickly. We may discover something useful about how we interact when travel. Like it or not, we are embarking on a grand experiment with remote work and technology.
As Figueres, the former UN official, said in February, quote, "We may realize that we don't have to travel as much. And I'm sure the market will jump into the opportunity, even more technology so that we can perfect more technology so that we can communicate and participate in meetings almost as though we were physically present. That would be a systemic contribution to reducing climate change. As she notes, all of this will prepare us for accommodating diseases and pandemics in the future.
Business needs to get off the policy and political sidelines. It's critical for companies to do what's right for their employees and some community members in a crisis. But during systemic emergencies and challenges, we need more. Business needs to use its political influence to drive change in government. Most multinational outside the energy sectors have avoided any serious lobbying or communication with political leaders about climate policy.
They sign statements supporting action, but they don't show up in person in DC, Brussels, or regional and state capitals to make their case for a price on carbon or investments in clean tech. The same may be happening with COVID-19 companies and large organizations like universities, and all the professional sports leagues in the US are going virtual or shutting down quickly. That's the right thing to do to flatten the curve of the infection rate.
But it is enough just to do what's directly within your control? Not anymore. Business obviously has a deep stake in having a functioning economy and employees that are healthy. So slowing the virus must be a top priority. That means calling on governments to get their acts together to close schools, ban public gathering, develop testing infrastructure much faster, and provide constant transparency about what's happening. If the federal administration of a country is lagging, companies need to apply pressure fast.
For me, all of this adds up to where I started. COVID-19 and climate change are, of course, black swans, one moving faster than the other, but they point to more permanent changes we all have to make in our lives and how we do business. Let's hope we pull together in time on all of these challenges and take the opportunity to build a more humane, compassionate, sustainable world. Please stay home for now and stay safe.
And that's important. That's really important. I don't know, how people can do this, but I know that it's important to do it. I know that people are going stir crazy. I mean, this is unprecedented. Who would have thought in a billion years that we'd be living this reality?
I mean, when people just totally disregard social distancing requirements and orders and things, and 24 spring breakers from Austin, Texas, tested positive for the pandemic V that's going around, following a spring break trip to Mexico. The Austin police public health officials said on Tuesday, a group of about 70 young adults traveled together on a chartered plane to Cabo San Lucas, Mexico, about a week and a half ago. And upon their return, 28 have tested positive for COV, while dozens more are under public health investigation. And this was all preventable because a week ago, we all knew what was going on. A week ago, the impacts of this were very much apparent. And 70 kids decided to jump on a plane to go have fun in Mexico, and they came back with 28 people infected.
Same thing happened in Florida. All the spring breakers, they didn't care. They would get it. They were all, we're partying. We're having a good time. Spring break comes once a year. And it's like, a lot of landed in the hospital, and spread it throughout. And, that's how you do it. That's how you spread it, by not being, careful and not being responsible. Marcia said it's disgusting how people are more worried about how they can financially benefit off. Oh, we said that. And so this one here is.
You read that one too.
You did as well. Okay.
President Trump on Sunday tweeted some really, oh my gosh, in a time of crisis, for the president to say what he said about being a ratings hit, as if people are sitting down, looking on YouTube or watching on their television the president's, updates and things like that, the daily White House briefings, just because we want to watch them. I mean, he's all talking about, the fact that he's attracted so many of an audience, and that, that's equivalent to the season finale of The Bachelor, and that numbers are continuing to rise. And I just don't know, at a time of crisis like this, whether it matters that the president beat out The Bachelor. But I guess that's what we get when we elected the guy that was a part of a reality TV show.
Yeah. What was the show?
The Apprentice.
Apprentice. Now we're actually living the reality show of Survivor. It's crazy. But, with all that's happening, with all the craziness in the world, with all the uncertainty, I think the best advice that I could give everyone is we need to become in tune with our spirit guide. I think it's important that we look within. I think it's important that we see what really matters in life, not go with the what am I missing? What do I have now that I had before? It's time to unite, and see how those around you align with your energy, with your light, with your love. Now might be a time of, it's almost like a cleansing that might have to take place. And, we have to really think hard, there, I know a lot of people may not believe in spirit guides. I like to call my higher self my spirit guide. A lot of people just believe in God, and that's okay. Everyone's entitled to believe what they want to believe. But I think that, there are beings out there of the highest truth and compassion working on our behalf to guide us throughout and give us the energy back to love. That's number one key. Love is very important. True love, not the superficial love that a lot of people will give you and tell you on the good times. When the times are good, right? It's during the times that are bad, during the times that you need the love the most. They're not physical, and they aren't bound by the natural laws of this world. They're spiritual beings.
These beings come in many forms, and they have different purposes, but their common goal is to help guide us back into alignment with the love of the universe. When you get stuck in a fear-based thought, as is so easy to do these days, or pattern, you can turn to your guides to help you, to lead you back to love. When you want to receive their guidance, all you have to do is be willing to surrender your fear and see with spiritual sight.
And that's important, guys. Not to be in fear, but to be in that frequency of light and love. Many don't understand what that frequency is. Many have been programmed to believe that you could love an inanimate object, that you love someone as long as they're getting along to get along. But love is deeper than that. And I believe that these times really show us clearly what is real and what is not. We all have our own spirit guides. We have guides that are ancestors and deceased family members. Some spirit guides may have names. In some cases, you may have a group of guides that all have the same name, like with Esther Hicks and Abraham.
If you haven't connected to your spirit guides before, I welcome you to keep an open mind. These 10 simple, beautiful steps will help you cultivate connection to your spirit guides and deepen your relationship day by day. If this all sounds a little trippy to you, let me reassure you that your guides are loving and wise. They're here to support you, and connecting with them is a comforting and joyful experience.
So how do we experience our spirit guides? Once you begin inviting in your spirit guides, there are different ways you might experience their presence. There's an inner knowing. You can experience a spirit guide as an inner knowing. You may feel or sense your guide's presence or hear a voice within, like a strong intuition or realization. Some people audibly hear or see their guides. I usually get a lot of my information in my dream state, and they're pretty on the target.
Sparks of light. Sparks of light are another indicator of a spirit guide's presence. Sometimes when I know my guides are with me, I see little sparks of light. It's so cool, that light, and know there's a presence, to see that light and to know that there's a presence with me at that moment.
So when books start falling off the shelf, your spirit guides are the ones who are kicking them off for you. I can tell you how many people have written to me or spoken to me at an event and said they discovered my book because it literally fell off the shelf in front of them. You can experience this kind of guidance is available to you.
Free writing after meditation. Another way you can experience the presence of a spirit guide is through writing. You can call on your spirit guides through meditation. And following your meditation, you can free write and allow the voice of your guides to work through you. Connecting to your spirit guides is about learning to rely on the voice of love. The reason these guides are here is to constantly bridge your thoughts from fear back to faith, forgiveness, love, and light. They present you with creative solutions and beautiful opportunities.
So here are the 10 steps to connect to your spirit guides. Step 1, get into the habit of asking. The first step to connecting with your spirit guide is to get into the habit of asking. We often forget that we have guidance within us and around us. In the busyness of day-to-day life, it's really easy to forget this connection.
When we forget that we can call on spirit for help to call on, we start to rely on our strength. That's when fear sets in. Therefore, the first step is to get into the habit of asking your spirit guides for help. The more you ask, the more you receive, period. Think about all the things that you need help with. Maybe you need help conceiving or making more money or healing a relationship that's struggling.
Make a list of what you need your spirit guides help with. Make a list of 5 to 10 biggest things you need help with. You can do this now, or you can come back to the exercise after aligning with your inner wisdom through prayer or meditation. Once you make this list, your next step is to offer up everything you need help with and invite your spirit guides to reveal a solution.
Say thank you, guides of the highest truth and compassion, for revealing the solutions to these problems. Then go through your list. Some examples. Thank you, guides of the highest truth and compassion, for offering solutions to my issue with my health. Thank you, guides of the highest truth and compassion, for revealing the solutions to the problems I'm having in my marriage. Thank you, guides of the highest truth and compassion, for revealing the solutions to my struggle with finding a career I love. Just go one by one, asking the guides to help you. If you want to get really laser focused, you can just choose one and offer it up daily for a while.
And again, this is all very you specific. There's not a cookie cutter, there's no specific way of doing it. You've got to find what works for you. Only call in the guides of the highest truth and compassion. Remember always to call in the guides of the highest truth and compassion. You don't want to invite the funky guides to the party. Okay, be very specific and clear about what kind of guides you're calling in so you don't get any riffraff coming through, because you don't want any dark forces entering your space.
As with the human world, there are lots of different characters, and we don't always want to invite every character over. Let me just read that.
No. For dinner.
The same goes for spiritual relationships. We want to open up our consciousness, space, and energy only to the guides of the highest truth and compassion. Don't worry about it too much. You call the shots, so don't fear those other beings. They can't come in without your permission.
And that's the key. We are sovereign beings. Nothing can hurt you unless you allow them to. You can call on your guides anytime. You don't have to wait for a problem to crop up in order to call on your spirit guides. Every time this person who wrote this article says she gives a talk, the first thing she does backstage is thank you, guides of the highest truth and compassion, for speaking through me. Whenever I say the silent prayer to call on my guides, I know the words that I need will come right through me. The simple act of asking is all that's required for the guides to show up.
Step 2 is to listen. The second step in connecting to your spirit guides is to listen. The way to do this is by meditating. When you meditate, you quiet your mind so you can hear the wisdom of the guidance that's within and around you. We have to slow down our vibration to become aligned with the presence of these guides. When we attune our energy to the frequency of love and peace, we can move easily and more easily connect to the vibrational messaging of our spirit guides.
Allow your energy through prayer and meditation. You can say a prayer such as, thank you, guides of the highest truth and compassion. Thank you for showing me what I need to know. Thank you for leading me in the right direction. Thank you for whatever it is that I need. Then you can sit in meditation for 5 to 20 minutes. This can be a very simple meditation. You can simply pay attention to your breath, becoming mindful of the sounds and sensations around you. I also have a spirit guide meditation to help connect. And I'll go ahead and put this.
Marcy says, I always get messages in my dreams too. I know when it's a message and not just a wild dream. The messages are very vivid and real.
Yeah. I have the same thing. And it's... So, is it your turn?
You can simply pay attention to your breath, becoming mindful of the sounds and sensations around you. I also have a spirit guides meditation to help you connect, and they have a link in this article. Step 3 is to write with your spirit guides. Once you've meditated, your next step is to write with your spirit guides. Open your journal or just grab a few sheets of paper at the top and write an invitation to them. such as,
Thank you, guides of the highest truth and compassion, for revealing to me the solution to these issues. Thank you, guides of the highest truth and compassion, for revealing whatever you want me to know.
dear guides of the highest truth and compassion, I welcome you to write through me now. Then simply let your pen flow. Just riff off into the page, allowing whatever needs to come through, ideas, stories, topics, inspired visions, things that you may not have thought of on your own, will begin to come forward. Don't second guess yourself or edit a word. Just write.
Your guides may speak directly to you. You may find the writing experience that your guides begin speaking to you directly. Instead of writing in the first person, you may begin writing in the second person. When I'm channeling my guides, they often say, "Dear sister." In some cases, your handwriting might even change. You might feel a presence of energy moving through you. That means that there's a presence that's working through you to give you direction.
Ask for a sign in step 4. Your guides can play fun games with you. They like to show you that they're present, so get playful with them and ask them for a sign. Have you never asked for a sign before, or have you asked but not known whether you received it? Learn how to ask for a sign and know when you've received a clear guidance. You'll be blown away when you start to ask your guides to show you signs. It will rock your world.
Step 5, pay attention to the guidance you receive. It's one thing to ask for guidance, it's another thing to witness it. It really takes it in and relish in the presence that's supporting you. When you pay attention to the guidance you receive, you're letting yourself be in the awe and wonder of all the love that is around you. It's a big deal. This beautiful feeling is available when you truly let yourself witness of the amazing support that is always with you.
The practice of paying attention to guidance isn't about demanding. You don't go around all day asking, "Where's my guidance? Where's my guidance?" Instead, you simply allow yourself to be open to the wonder of that guidance. Your guidance may show up too in cool and unexpected ways, even in ways I haven't mentioned here. Your guidance can show up as a song on the radio, a billboard on the freeway, or somebody saying to you exactly what you needed to hear. Our guides often work through other people. They work through doctors and friends, children, and even strangers. Spirit guides love to work through technology too, which is something I talk about more in Super Attractor.
And I went ahead and put the link to this article so you guys could, go into the different links that she has here. Step number 6, stay in an energy of gratitude. As I mentioned in step 5, you want to thank your guides. Rather than being in a place of neediness, you want to be in a place of gratitude and appreciation for their guidance and love. Shift the way you talk to your guides. If you find yourself thinking things like, "Guides, why haven't you given me this yet?" Or, "Guides, I don't believe in you. Why haven't you shown up for me faster?" You're showing your distrust of them. You're telling them you're not really open to their guidance and that you want to be in control.
Your gratitude keeps your relationship strong. Instead, you want to be thanking your guides, appreciating them, and feeling deep love and gratitude for them. When you receive any form of guidance, thank them. Just say silently, "Thank you, guides, for showing me this solution," or "Thank you, guides, for this sign." And when your guides give you a spiritual assignment, thank them for that as well.
Your gratitude keeps the relationship so strong and keeps those guys present with you all the time because they know they're welcome. When you open your heart to offer your guides gratitude and appreciation, they boomerang that energy right back to you. It's hard to describe what it feels like to be in the place of constant love and gratitude with your guides. It is tremendous and beautiful feeling. It's available to you.
Step number 7 is to release the outcome and trust in a plan better than your own. Easier said than done. Your guides have a plan that's better than yours. They're loving and wise, and they want to bring you the right relationship, the right career, the doctor you need, the experience that will help you. We get in the way of that guidance. I've often avoided divine guidance by trying to control situations. I've obsessed over how things should go and tried to manipulate outcomes to get what I thought was best. Inevitably, this only pushed my guides away. But when we let go of our plans and trust in a plan that's much greater than ours, we start to truly feel like we're being led. When we surrender, we can feel our guides leading us to the next right action.
We must release outcomes in order to truly be in co-creation with our spirit guides. Be more childlike. If you have young kids in your life, you may be aware that many children can still see their guides. They may even speak about them. You know how their imaginary friend, that's their guides. Usually around the age of 7, the veil starts to close and we shut down to these guidance system. Some people may call them angels. I like to call my guide. I don't think I have plural. Maybe I do, but I have a higher self. That's who talks to me via dreams, who's constantly guiding me to lift that veil and reconnect with your guides. Be more childlike. Do things that bring you joy. Jump on trampolines, go for a run, paint, swim, cook. Whenever I'm cooking, I feel the presence of my guides around me. Do the things that bring you joy, and that guidance will just show up fast. You'll feel it. Remember, joy is the most powerful vibration we can embody.
Step number 9 is ask your spirit guides for their names if you feel called to do so. You don't have to do this step, but if you feel called to ask your guide's name or multiple guides' names, ask them to reveal it to you. The first name that comes to mind will be the name of your guide. Even if it sounds strange, you can trust that what you hear is correct.
One of my guides is a guide called Lily. He's a guy called Lily. And she came to me many years ago. I just knew her name was Lily. After several years of knowing Lily, I had a medium give me a reading. At the end of the reading, she said, Lily wants me to tell you thank you because she loves working with you. I hadn't told that medium about Lily or written about this guy. The medium just knew she was there.
And step number 10, trust in your own psychic ability. Believe in yourself and in your capacity to call on this presence. Trust in your ability to connect to these guides and to feel the support. Know that you have an ever-present energy of love that is always within you and around you, supporting you and guiding you.
The more that you trust in your own psychic ability, the more you'll be able to hear, the more you'll allow this divine guidance to lead you to the highest good.
Allowing spirit guides into your life is a great gift. Not only will they support you, but they'll also help you, help others. They'll support you in being a light in the world. We need this presence of light to support us right now. In the chaos, drama, and violence of these times, we need this presence to bring us back to love.
And the name of the author is Gabrielle Bernstein. She's a New York Times best-selling author, and her book is called Super Attractor. And
that's the article.
And that's the article. So, in these troubling times, again, everyone has their beliefs. Some people, have a religion they follow. Some people claim they have a relationship with Jesus. We all have a different way of dealing with our inner being and what works for us. You've got to find what works for you. And, especially in these times, it's important. I like being out in nature. I think it's a great place to be able to connect with my higher self. I connect with my higher self in my dream state all the time. That's my best way of doing it. So it's important for you guys to find whatever works for you. Lead your life in love and light, not in fear. So let's see here. It seems like that's about it.
She had an earlier comment which said that she read about a plague way back. It might have been the Black Death, but it only ended because of a quarantine. It's all we can do right now. I wish people took it more serious.
Yeah, and the sad thing is people are not. They're calling it a hoax. They're just not following the guidelines and the rules. And the longer people keep breaking the rules, the longer this thing is going to spread, and who knows what's going to actually take place. It's serious stuff. I know that a lot of people are really depressed because they feel like their freedoms are being taken away. I know that I'm sure a lot of people's relationships are suffering because of it. There's a lot of changes, and you just, you got to make the best of it, and deal with it the best you can.
That's all one can do.
Yeah, that's about it. All right, so if you guys don't have any further questions or any more discussion, that's all we got for today. So thank you all for tuning in. Stay safe.
Yes.
Be well. We love you. But remember to always love yourselves too.